Welcome to the Fantasy Golf Bag Podcast, presented by FantasyGolfBag.com, your number one source for the most in-depth PGA Tour analysis in the daily fantasy and sports betting world. Each week, our experts will discuss everything you need to know, from the course preview and key stats to top plays, fades, and strategies. Whether golf betting, grinding out cash games, or playing for a big GPP win, our team has you covered. Let's get after it.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Fantasy Golf Bag Podcast. I am your host, Redkacheek, joined today by Mr. JkrayASU, and we're going to bring you the 2019 Desert Classic out in La Quinta, California, talking some Draftkings, maybe some betting strategy, recap the Sony Open here in just a moment. But first, let me bring in Jacob. Jacob, how's it going, man? How was your kind of first full field event of the 2019 season, or calendar year?
Hey, Drew, it's going good. It was not that great, but it was still good to welcome the first full field event. Unfortunately, didn't have any Kuchar. When my lineup, particularly my single, it was honestly between him and Zach Johnson. They were $100 apart in the mid AKs, and just got unlucky there. Took the wrong guy. Tried to ride some hot course history, and it looked like current form was the way to go there. But excited to dig in this week for the Desert Classic and see if we can't get an edge and do much better than last week.
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway from last week is that previous event narrative from Hawaii, and kind of mentioned it last week. It might have been on the live stream Wednesday night, but I think that is a good narrative going forward. Is as the full fields kind of progress, you won't see big differences in the fields week to week as much. You won't see only 30 of 150 guys that played the week before like we saw last week, but it's definitely something to consider. Guys that have played 1-2 weeks in a row should be kind of rounding into form by that third week, and typically that's someone to target. So I didn't see exactly how many guys that played the previous week finished in like the top 20 last week, but I mean, you got Kuchar, you had Putnam, Leishman was there. I mean, it was stacked. So definitely something to put in the back of your mind for next year. But I think it's something to consider going forward as well, is looking for guys that are kind of on that 2-week stretch. They usually are, have the most rust knocked off, getting some type of momentum. They're feeling good with their swing, putting, whatever it is. So I'm definitely going to try to carry that forward as best I can this season. And like I said, it's going to be somewhat tough with the full fields, every week. Yeah. But definitely something to be said for form, especially good form in back-to-back weeks.
Yeah, I will say that was the only reason that I got on Putnam, and that was, I think, Wednesday, or it might have been Thursday morning before lock. I was just trying to decide between him and another guy. I was trying to really digest just what you were saying, how much legitimacy this Tournament of Champions chatter had relative to Sony Open results. So I ended up going with Putnam, and obviously he played very well and was leading for a lot of it. Certainly having two other guys miss the cut didn't do anything for me. It didn't mean anything, but I agree to what you said. I do think it's worth considering. Keep it in the back of your mind as the beginning of a new season rolls around. You got guys coming off long layoffs. Certainly makes sense to sort of lean toward guys that have had a couple rounds under the belt.
Yeah, for sure. We get a taste of that this week a little bit. You kind of there's a fine line between too much golf and then not enough golf. We kind of saw that last year when various guys like Paul Casey had a great run when he won the Valspar, was playing really solid, and then finally kind of tapered off. So we see just at the top of the pricing, you got John Rahm, Justin Rose, Patrick Cantlay. We're not going to dive into pricing just yet, but those guys we haven't seen play since the end of last year. And then you have right below that Charles Howell, Adam Hadwin, Andrew Putnam, guys we did see last week. So it'll be interesting to see how people kind of treat that. I think with those strong players up top, it's not as important. But yeah, as you get kind of the middle tier, like you mentioned Putnam from last week playing at the Tournament of Champions, that's a big deal, especially going out to Hawaii. I'm sure he had a decent amount of travel to get there. And he might be California anyways, but still, like, getting used to the time zone for 2 weeks in a row and then going to play. So definitely something I noted. I'm going to listen to the podcast next year, kind of ahead of the tournament, to make sure that we don't forget that in the next, 51 weeks.
Sounds good.
But, yeah, man, it was pretty exciting. Not sure how much you watched, but I watched, Matt Kuchar really struggled the first couple holes on the front nine. The final day, Putnam looked great, putting great, and then just kind of switched on 7, and Kuchar just went on a tear on the back nine, and really no one had a chance. I was trying to chase a couple people. I thought Ches Reavie and Leishman might have a chance, but yeah, once the odds kind of hit Kuchar again, and they were like minus 200 or minus 400 after the 13th hole, there was really no one that could catch him, unfortunately. So I did not have a Kuchar outright. But had the Ches Reavie top 5, so that's good. But outside of that, man, Draftkings was, decent, not great, but not bad. So I'm excited to kind of jump back into the Desert Classic, where I always like to see some course history taking effect.
Exactly. I think that this is one of those tournaments where, just because of the format of it, you want to find guys that are comfortable playing events like this. Pro-ams where it's a little looser. And I think that, again, is key this year. We see guys continuously play well at this style of tournament. And I think finding guys that you can couple that course knowledge, course history, being familiar with these types of events, along with recent form, I think if you can find some of those guys, you'll certainly do well to, find success this week.
Yep. I'm looking forward to it. Let's go ahead and jump into the golf course. I think we'll do it. I think I mentioned to you earlier, we'll touch on our top plays kind of right off the bat in each pricing tier like normal. But we won't go so in depth. I think when we have the live stream like last Wednesday, we were able to, with a 150-man field, there's quite a bit of movement as far as guys that were kind of popping or guys that were fading in our eyes. So We'll kind of leave the secondary thoughts, the more in-depth talk on certain players, if we have more about it, on Wednesday. So this week, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we're going to bump it back just slightly. So we'll do the live stream on Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern on Twitch TV. So it's twitch.tv/Redkacheek. You can go ahead and follow that channel, and you'll be notified when we go live on Wednesday night. But 9 p.m. Eastern, that sound right?
Yep, 9 p.m.
Perfect. That should gives people a little bit more time to get situated. West Coast a little bit more time. So yeah, that'll be good. So yeah, definitely tune in Wednesday night. Twitch.tv/Redkacheek, 9 p.m. Eastern. So without further ado, man, you ready to jump into this golf course?
Let's do it. Let's hear what you got to say. I know you're the master when it comes to breaking these down. What you got?
All right. So we're playing a 3-course rotation. We got the Stadium course, the La Quinta Country Club, the PGA West Nicklaus Golf Course. All similar designs as far as the distance and the par. So they're all par 72, ranging from 7,000 yards to 7,200 yards. Quite a bit of difference in scoring from what I saw last year. If I can find it real quick. For example, I'll go ahead and break down the Stadium course, and then I'll kind of tack on some thoughts on the others. Even though I'm not going to put a lot of weight into it, I'll kind of bring you in that convo right now, Jacob. But, we got a 3-course rotation. We see this similarly at the Pebble Beach Invitational, or the Pro-Am. And then we also see this over in Europe. They do the Dunhill Links, which is a 3-course rotation. And then the final round, I think, is at St. Andrews. But on these type of events with 3 courses rotating, and then the stadium course is the only one that's played twice. What's your thoughts on the other golf courses? Are you just focusing on the stadium course, or are you just trying to get a good picture of, the golfer's form coming in and just trying to see which ones carry the most weight for 4 days?
I think it's a little bit of both, honestly. I certainly going to be looking at current form coming in. I think that last week showed how valuable that is. So certainly looking at current form, I think, again, looking at how they performed at this event in the past is worth considering. But I think you're almost splitting hairs when you really try and dissect course by course. Certainly stadium courses played tougher in the past. I think a long time ago, it was ranked as one of the toughest courses, according to Golf Digest or something like that. But the other two are almost two of the easiest courses in the rotation. Like one is dead last and one is second or third to last easiest.
Right.
So I think because they're playing all of them, you just have to accept that, okay, find one type of golfer that can do well in all of these. Not necessarily somebody that might be suited better for the stadium course, but might struggle to score on an easier course like the La Quinta or the Nicklaus course. I think just that might get a little noisy if you really start trying to dig into that. I think that you can look at past results, and you might be surprised in what you find. You might see that a guy that plays a Pete Dye course really well did well on stadium courses, but then struggled on the other two. Mm-hmm. And then you might find a guy that's a bomber that did just as well on a stadium course, but lit it up on the other two. I mean, I think it's so variable trying to break each course down individually. I think what the best advice is to, in my opinion, from me, is to just find some golfers that you really like, have some good course history, have some decent current form going into it, and just go from there.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's definitely a blend. I'm putting a little bit more weight on kind of course history, as we'll probably get to, and most people see. You got a guy like Ches Reavie, who has played really well recently, obviously gained 100,000 strokes on approach last week. So he's going to look really good to everybody. But when you look at his course history here, it's really not that good. So he is one that I would be tending to, like, as an example, put more weight into course history, and especially if people are going to be on him and he's going to be more expensive than he's probably ever been, I'm guessing. Yeah, that would be a reason for me to fade, and I wouldn't feel that bad about it. I mean, golf's tough enough, 9,200, and you almost have to win. But let me go ahead and kind of share some thoughts on the golf course. Then we'll get into some plays, and then we'll kind of see where your head's at, where my head's at, and see how this strategy is going to work. But,
let's do it.
All right, so like I said, these three golf courses, I'm going to mainly focus on the stadium. I'll definitely consider La Quinta and the Nicklaus course, but for our sake, I think stadium course is a good one to focus on. The last 7 years, the winning score has been minus 24, minus 25, minus 28, 22, 25, 20, and 22. So definitely birdies are better or big here. There was a big difference in, for example, the stadium course versus the Nicklaus course. There was 3.94 birdies on average on the stadium course when there was over 4.5 on average at the Nicklaus course. So I definitely am considering birdies are better this week. That is, I think, definitely a key stat. There'll be plenty of birdies to be made. It's definitely a putting type of course. It ranked in the bottom 50, 50th percentile of all the golf courses on the PGA Tour last year as far as difficulty. So I'm not weighing putting so much, but the guys that's going to putt well is definitely going to have a chance because these greens aren't that tough to hit. Fairways are somewhat wide, but like the rough is down. They'll have plenty of opportunities to hit a bunch of greens. So I am considering driving accuracy a little bit. It was one of the lowest or most difficult last year on the stadium course. It ranked 16th on tour. I don't think it's that big a deal, so it's not a very high weight for me. But I definitely want to consider guys that tend to drive it straight. You'll notice a guy like Ryan Palmer will pop on course history, but he's one that kind of scares me as well because we all know his history with water is not ideal. It's not a good relationship. So definitely considering driving a little bit. Green and regulation percentage is up there, and then birdie average. I will note that 4 of the last 5 winners finished the event as the number 1 par 4 scorer that week. So I don't love putting a ton of weight into like par 3s, par 4s, par 5s as far as scoring, because especially if it's par 4 scoring. Like par 5 scoring I can understand, but par 4 scoring is like 75 or 70% of the golf course. So, if a guy played the par 4s well, he probably played the tournament well. But there's some golf courses that you really have a tough chance, like U.S. Opens, for example. Like, you're not going to make a lot of birdies on the par 4s or the par 3s, but if you can take advantage of the par 5s, you'll do fine. That's why guys like Dustin Johnson have played well. Brooks recently, Tiger historically has always done well in the U.S. Open. So this week, par 4 scoring, I think people will mention, but it's not something I'm going to be considering. And then kind of talking through like my overall thought process on players, I'd definitely be considering the recent form. I think that's important the last 2 weeks. But mainly the course history. I'll probably put, if I had to do like 100% split between course history and recent form, it'd probably be like 60-40 in favor of the course history as a nod. But statistically speaking, I'll go ahead and rip off what I'm eyeing, and then I'll let you kind of fill in where your head's at. Okay. But pretty standard this week. So I'll be looking at strokes gained ball striking, strokes gained approach as a little bit of a buffer. As we probably know, strokes gained ball striking includes strokes gained approach, but I want to add a little bit of a bump to approach, so I'm adding that in as a secondary stat. Included fairways gained, like I mentioned, in green and regulation. I threw in proximity from 125 to 150 just as another nudge to see guys that are hitting their wedges and short irons fairly well. And then I put birdies are better. So those are at least so far, those are my key stats that I'm kind of eyeing to narrow down my player pool. So how does that look compared to you, or where are you completely different or similar? What are you thinking?
No, a lot of that I've got. There are a few that I've included. In addition to that, I'm looking at off the tee just because of what you were saying about the fairways hit difficulty with the stadium course. I just kind of want a bigger picture than just fairways gained. So off the tee is weighted a little bit, not a ton in my model. It's certainly less than the others, but I just wanted an overall picture from that. And then I do have par 5s, stroke gain par 5s in mind.
There you go.
I saw something earlier today that I think that noted the last 2 or 3 winners all led the field in par 5 scoring. So I know especially it comes into play in these par 70. Are they all 72s?
Yeah, they're all 72s.
Okay, so they're all super short.
Yep.
And
out there in the desert, it's gonna
all 72s. So guys that can, I wouldn't necessarily reach to say I'm looking for guys making eagles, but putting themselves in really good positions for eagles where birdie is almost a sure thing. That's a huge leg up on guys that that are trying to put themselves in a good position for a birdie on a par 5. I think if you can optimize yourself and your position and your game by taking advantage of these par 5s on such short courses. Again, it's not weighted a ton, but I definitely want it in there.
Yeah, I kind of get what you're coming from. The reason why I don't think pinpointing a specific par scoring is that important here is you see the leaderboard has a good mix of guys. Just looking at last year as an example, the playoff included John Rahm, who was averaging 310 yards for the season, and you got a guy like Andrew Landry averaging 290. Like, it's a 20-yard difference.
Yeah.
So there's just, I think of par 4 scoring or par 5 scoring as guys that hit it a long way, even though a lot of damage can be done with the wedges. So it's a mix. I really want guys that are just, hitting a lot of greens, a lot of fairways. Like, it sounds so simple, but from looking through this leaderboard, you look even at the high end of pricing, like guys like Charles Howe and Adam Hadwin. I feel like they're the same category of player as far as ball strikers. So that's really, I'm trying to focus. If I had to categorize the player, it's a ball striker. I think that's, with a little bit of recent form and some course history, that would be my perfect, 6 players for a lineup.
Mm-hmm.
It's that easy.
There you go. Well, let's win all the money then.
Win all the money. The problem is when we start to get into the pricing, let's go ahead and jump into the 10K and above, because I'm curious what you want to do with these guys we haven't seen. I'm not really thrilled about paying 11.6 for Jon Rahm, and I'm a big fan of Jon Rahm. I think he's a hothead, but he's one of those guys that are so streaky because of it. He makes a par on the first hole when he thought he should have made eagle for some reason, and he gets pissed off and rips off 6 birdies in a row.
Yeah.
And then you got Justin Rose, who's should be the number 1 ranked player in the world if it was me ranking these people. I get the Brooks nod, but Rose is good. He's really good. What do you do with these guys above 10K? It's a weird pricing group. So I'll kind of defer to you to lead off this 10K. But right now, similar to last week, I don't really want to touch the real high end guys. If anything, I'm interested in Patrick Cantlay. Mm-hmm. But Adam Hadwin, Charles Howe, I think's a bit rich, and then Rahm and Rose, I think by default will be the highest owned up here, probably in the tournament. And I'm not sure I'm really interested in doing that.
Yeah, I'm torn. My initial thoughts were that I was going to go opposite the way I did last week, where I was automatically fading the top. And I'm still uncertain, but it's easier for me to stomach paying up for these guys this go around. Last week we had Justin Thomas.
Yeah.
And then we had, Gary Woodland. We had Leishman. We had Spieth.
Yeah, but we're not far off that. You got Cantlay, okay. We'll, throw him in a Woodland category, I guess. But, outside of Justin Thomas, Bryson, and then you got, thinking up top, now we have Charles Howell over 10K, Adam Hadwin over 10K. Like, it's kind of the same situation we had last week. I don't think the middle is as strong as we saw last week, but so that might go to your point. But yeah, I might just, maybe in cash, I would probably have to lean Rose over Rahm if Rahm's going to be more popular. But I think Cantlay to me is the one that sticks out the most. I'm really interested in Cantlay out there in California.
Yeah, no, I like that play also. I'm afraid that's going to be
you think
really
that's going to be the popular
too.
Play? Man.
Yeah, early projections that I'm looking at have Rahm and Cantlay the same.
And Rose is below them?
Yeah, just a smidge below them.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that'd be something to talk about on Wednesday if projections start to level out a little bit and become more consistent, because that's big for me. I really like Cantlay. I'll just leave it at that in that top range. There's good things to be said for all of them, but if I had to pick, considering ownership and form and course fit, I think Cantlay is the guy that stands out to me up here.
Yeah, so I think that the way that this is going to go in this top range, just from how popular these guys are. Rahm had a recent win. Rose is Rose, and Cantlay was who everybody was jumping on. Those 3 guys, one of them is going to be the top. They're going to be the top 3 owned. I think that's pretty standard. And then below them, in the bottom of this range, you've got Howell, who's had really insane form coming in. Mm-hmm. A win, T14 and T8. And then you've got Adam Hadwin, which everybody's like, whoa, why is Hadwin 10K? What are these people smoking? Well, his course history is insane. And I think that's that. I mean, of course, that's why his price is elevated to what it is. But as a result, Howell and Hadwin are going to be lower owned.
Mm-hmm.
So sure, it might make sense going with one of them. Right? I think it allows you the flexibility to say, you know what, I'm going to ride current form. I'm going to go with Howell. He's going to be my 10K guy, and I'm going to fade the top, the top above him. Or I really feel like I'm going to, ride course history on here, and Hadwin has killed it last 3 times he's played here. I'm going to ride with Hadwin and then drop down. So I think there's merit to both of it. Honestly, I have no idea what I'm going to do in this top range. I could very easily see myself taking Rahm and dropping down to the 9 or 8s with one guy. I'm really torn in this range. Normally I have a better idea of it, but
I just know I'm not that interested in the 6K range. Like, there's some high 6K guys that I'm okay with playing, but like I just can't go too far down and feel decent. So I like some of the guys kind of in the high 8s, or say the mid 8s and the 9s that we're about to touch on. I just can't really commit to like an 11-6 ROM in this field. But that's just me. Again, we can kind of let this weigh on our minds until Wednesday and touch on it. But yeah, I'll go ahead, and Patrick Haley looks awesome to me at 10-6. I think that's a very fair price. So
yeah.
And then shout out real quick, because you reminded me, Charles Howell's great finish last, really at the end of the fall, and then last week. Shout out to Mr. Chris Ferreter on the podcast last week. Chatted with him a bit, and I was able to select Mr. Charles Howell III as my one and done pick. I was pleased. Most people went Justin Thomas, and then somewhat disappointed, I guess. My alternate was Leishman, but I'll take a Charles Howell right off the bat.
That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
That was a good hit.
Yeah, I think so. 8th place for him is when else are you going to play him and feel decent about a top 10?
Exactly.
I mean, he's solid, but
well, and he was higher. I mean, he was like T5 at one point.
I know. Beggars can't be choosers, but yeah, I mean, the swap off of JT, I was surprised how many people were really high on JT last week for a one and done pick.
Yeah.
But yeah, shout out to Chris Ferreter, podcast host, got the good vibes, looking good for the season. So
nice.
All right, let's go ahead and drop down into the 9K. I guess I feel better, but also worse in the 9K. There's like, you can't pick all of them, obviously, but there's some really good plays, I think, down here in the 9K range. So one guy that I think will be very, very popular is Mr. Abraham Answer. Comes in 4th in fairways gained, 10th in overall strokes gained ball striking, 4th in bogey avoidance. I may not have mentioned that, but I add that with my birdie or better percentage. So he ranks out really well. Birdie's not so much, but I think that can flip. He's just he can be a streaky putter like most of these guys. And his proximity from 125 to 150 is a little bit sketchy, but I think Answer is, kind of risen as one of the new young stars, or rising stars, I guess, for the 2019 season. So pretty happy with, after last week, he gained 5.5 strokes tee to green, lost strokes putting, and finished 29th. Like, I think you were on him, and 29th is probably not the best, but man, I think Answer is a really strong play this week. I was interested in Aaron Wise, and don't want to steal your thunder either. I'm not sure where you're at in the 9K range, but I mean, he played pretty terrible at the Tournament of Champions, but prior to that, man, I think he's leading the 2019 season in birdies or better. Kind of hitting on those first few events in the fall swing, and then he didn't play the Sony, so I'm not sure if there's a reason for that. I didn't really follow that closely last week, but I probably won't play any Aaron Wise, but my initial read was he'd be a really good fit for this golf course. But now I'm a little bit skeptical.
Interesting.
Did you notice that?
I didn't. I wasn't.
Almost all of them played
Really
the Tournament of Champions. I just don't know why he missed. But, I mean, he's still ranked in this field, including part of the FedEx Cup playoffs. He's second in birdies or better. Aaron Wise is. First is Justin Rose, actually. But Aaron Wise, I feel like, would be a pretty strong fit. And he finished 34th, 17th the last 2 years. So maybe if I hear more on what was going on, why he didn't play the Sony, I just don't know. So
He probably didn't play it because he finished 27th.
yeah, but if you're already over there, why not just play? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if he was committed. I didn't look that deep this afternoon, but that'll be something that I'll look into. And then just kind of hitting on the others because there's not that many up here. Putnam, I'm not going to chase after last week. Mickelson's probably fine in GPPs, but nothing I'm going to be too high on. And then Scott Piercy over Ches Reavie will be my stronger stand, I guess, for the week. If people really love Ches Reavie, I will equally like Scott Piercy.
Yeah. All right, so I am with you on a number of these. I really am a big fan of Answer, but I'm a big fan of Answer when he's 8%, not when he's 15%.
What are you seeing right now?
So right now he is 16%.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes the rest of the week.
And
there's just too many guys around him, though. I feel like that's got to come down a tad.
There are, but who are they going to play in the nines and feel good about other
Ches
than
Reavie, I guarantee.
No, I know. Other than Reavie and Piercy.
Mickelson, people like that. They got the California. I mean, Mickelson's not that bad of a play. Like 9,500 is probably fine. I just wouldn't touch him in cash, and it would just be, a 20 to 30% allocation of GPPs on the maximum.
So right now it looks like the concentration in this range is on Reavie at 22%, Answer at 16, Wise at 15, Luke List at 15. Your boy Scott Piercy at 8%.
All right. Well,
Piercy
it is. I
so
still like those three. I think it depends on the contest. If they're around 15% for a couple of these guys, one of them in your lineup's not going to break the bank as far as ownership goes.
Yeah,
so,
no.
I mean, Reavie's up there. I think Reavie, even if he was like 10%, I probably still wouldn't go back to Reavie. But, I'll let you finish. I kind of stole your thunder a bit.
You're fine. Answer, like I said, I like him as a player. I was on him last week. I don't know if I'll be on him at 15%, possibly, just because I do like him a lot. And he looks to be a good fit for this course. Reavie, I will not pay 9,200 for, especially if he's going to be that popular. Piercy has really good course history here, so I am definitely interested in him. And Luke List, he missed the cut last year, but the year before he made it didn't play that well. He finished 6th in 2016, so he knows this course. Whether or not he can put that to good use, I mean, we all know the infatuation sometimes with Luke List, and we know how bad of a putter he can be. So that one might be a little dicey. If it's all right with you, I can jump into the 8s as well because I don't really have much more in the 9s.
No, I'll say, I think this tournament turns into a putting contest, which is probably why, he's not been the best. He had one top 10 his last 3 years, a missed cut and a 41st. But $9,000 Luke List is fine with me, man. I mean, he's got, in the fall swing, he's got 2 4th-place finishes, given their weak fields, but this field's not the strongest either. But yeah, I mean, he's got a 4th place at the RSM, 4th place at the Safeway, a miscut at the Mayakoba, which, isn't really his fit. So this golf course he actually gained strokes in both of those putting. Wow. The 2 he finished top 4. Maybe that's his ceiling, his 4th. But yeah, Luke List is on my list. He's not a cash play by any means, but he's definitely one of my 3 short ones in the 9K range. So
yeah,
I'll leave it at that. Well, let's drop into the 8K. Keep it moving. Yeah, who's kind of your top plays, at least so far, that you're eyeing in the 8K range?
So I think Kizire will be pretty popular just because of his finish last week, but he's not really popping off the page for me. Most of you know I played Kisner last week. I will not be playing him this week. He did make the cut, but he just struggled throughout the weekend. So I will not be on Kisner or Harmon. Kizire, I'll pass on. I do have some interest in the lower 8Ks. Halfway interested in JJ Spawn. I like him a lot. What concerns me is that he hasn't played.
He just got married, man. Can't.
Yeah, I mean, he's got that going for him.
Do we have any sample size on golfers after they got married?
That's a great question. I don't think we do. I think there are.
I can't think of anyone recently, to be honest.
Yeah, I think we have clever anecdotes about it across the internet, but there's no.
Spieth's our first one, actually. Last week, missed the cut.
Oh yeah, so that's terrible.
Yeah, so
we got to take a different angle.
I like it.
No, I don't mind Spawn. I don't mind CT Pan at all either. I know I'm just hitting them really quick. Swafford is going to be very popular because of his recent finish and his win in 2017 here. Mm-hmm. I feel like I have to see more from him. He just came in and sort of came out of nowhere at the Sony. I'm on the fence with him. And then the last two guys that I've got some mediocre interest in are Sungjae M. He actually ranks really well in my model. He ranks 4th overall. Really solid off the tee. Really solid birdie or better. And a good ball striker. And then Bo Hostler's he played this event last year, which was his first appearance. And he finished 20th. Mm-hmm. Had over 6 strokes gained total, actually lost almost 4 strokes gained approach and still finished 20th. He's known typically as a good putter, which I know we've said putting can elevate you here because the rest of it is so mediocre. I mean, for the most part, everybody can hit a fairway and hit these greens.
Yep.
Putting is where you can really elevate yourself, and that's what he's good at. So I think that goes to show why he did as well as he did his first time out. So that's some general interest from me in this 8K range.
Yeah, so I'll just go ahead and start it off with my main guy. That's going to be, if he keeps getting priced down here, he's going to be a staple in my cash games throughout the entire season. Mr. Sungjae M. He is solid, dude. He is. I forget how many times he won on the web.com, or not won. Finished top 10, like some ridiculous number of times last year on the web.com tour.
7 in a row or something.
Yeah. I mean, it was like he missed two or three cuts, I think. And then like everything was inside like the top 20, except for one showing, I think, somewhere early on in the season. And then everything else was like wins or top 5s.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's starting to show, like, we don't get strokes gain data on the web.com tour. And we're starting to see why he is so good. So kind of looking at since October last year, at the end of last year for the fall swing, let's see, at the Sanderson Farms, he missed the cut. He lost strokes tee to green. Then he gained 8 strokes tee to green at the Shriners. He gained 2 strokes tee to green at the RSM. And then again last week, 4.5 strokes tee to green at the Sony. I think he is starting to feel a little more comfortable on the PGA Tour. So Sungjae M is going to be my highest owned guy this week for sure. 8,100 for a guy that, I mean, it's probably very difficult to see him missing a cut. And I probably screwed everybody's lineup that's going to play Sungjae M this week. But just looking at the stats, and like I said, we don't have a ton of stats off the web.com besides traditional, which are pretty impressive for him, to be honest. But he lines up pretty solid here. Birdies are better gained. Ball striking, top 15 ball striking. 8th birdies are better gained. Kind kind of in the top half in the field and all the other like proximity, bogey avoidance, which isn't bad compared. I mean, you look at the top and John Rahm's like 100th in proximity, 125 to 150. So relatively speaking, Sung J M checks a ton of boxes. So really high on Sung J M this week. He's probably good. He's probably perfectly priced, but I think he's just too cheap in my mind that I'm going to play a lot of Sung J M. The other one is Mr. Ryan Palmer, who I usually try to avoid during the PGA Tour season, which is every year. But his history here is pretty solid. And when I started looking back at his PGA Tour results, he plays really well kind of in that November, December through February swing. And if you notice at the end of last year in October, November, he finished third at Nine Bridges, the CJ Cup, and then seventh at the Shriners. Gained a ton of strokes, tee to green on approach. So I think he continues his play. So Ryan Palmer is probably going to be borderline on my cash side, but definitely in my GBPs. I don't know what you see his ownership at, but he's one that kind of scares me if he's too high owned. But I think he is a decent play this week.
8%.
8%, perfect. So Ryan Palmer, I mean, it's tough to see from the naked eye, but course history-wise, the last couple of events, again, the rust after a 1 month layoff, from seeing him play is tough to kind of get behind. But I think there's too much course history and recent form that looks pretty solid. And then elsewhere, CT Pan, I'm not really that excited about. I feel like this isn't the best course for him to use his strength, so I'm not really there. And then you mentioned Hudson Swafford. I'm kind of interested in Hudson Swafford, but again, you mentioned he's going to be pretty popular. So I'll probably play Hudson Swafford this week. He played pretty solid last week, tee to green. He's played well here at this event in the past. Obviously, has won it a couple years ago. Only missed the cut once in 7 showings, I think. So definitely interested in Hudson Swafford. But outside of that, I'm not really going to jump up to Kisner, Kazire, Harmon. So pretty much is where it is. Okay. Did you a guy reached out to me earlier, was talking about like season long stuff. Did you happen to look into Lucas Glover at all? Because he's on my list for a guy this week, but we haven't seen him in a while either, and I feel like this could be a good golf course for him. So he may be in my GPP list. I don't think I could make it a cash, but he rates out really well statistically. He's played this golf course decent in the past, and his recent form looks like Cameron Champ's recent form. So I don't know if you dug into that.
How much is he? I don't even see him.
Lucas Glover is 8,600. So he's one of those, man, because remember last week we kind of touched on, or maybe it was me blowing smoke, but like, guys like Keegan Bradley or even Patrick Reed finished well, and people weren't on Patrick Reed. And you look at these guys that are world-class players. Lucas Glover's won a major. He had a really rough stretch, but at some point he's kind of turning around now, actually. He should be at the top of a lot of people's lists, or more so than he is. So I think he'll be very low owned, and Lucas Glover is too good of a player to kind of pass up in these fields, in my opinion. So
interesting. No, I saw him talked about recently by somebody. I'm not even sure who it was, but it sort of intrigued me because I know he's normally the kind of guy that nobody's on and then he pops off and everybody wants to jump on him. He's really hard to peg. And I'm curious. I've just pulled him up here just because I want to see what his. Wow, that is surprising. I did not expect. 17th at Safeway, 14th Sanderson, 7th Shriners, 11th RSM.
But it was happening before that. I was keeping a close eye on that because back at the end of 2017, he was starting to have some decent form. Then he hit a little rough stretch. It just wasn't finishing high, but he was making a lot of cuts, losing strokes putting, and people weren't playing him. And then finally, he had one good finish at the Honda. Later on, he finished decent at it might have been the Memorial. I think he was cheap. He finished 52nd, which making the cut there is okay. And then, he finished the season off on a really high note. So 17th. For those listening, he finished 17th at the Safeway, and then 14th, 7th, and then 11th. So 4 top 17s with 2 top 11s in the last 4 starts of his 2018 season. So, yeah, I kind of want to touch on him because I don't think people are really going to play him, and he's one that people just overlook and they haven't seen him play in a while. Maybe he's going to be super low owned. I like Lucas Glover quite a bit, and he checks boxes statistically. Like, it's not just, it's not just off of, oh, he played good, 2 months ago for a little bit, and he finished well here one time. No, he's played good here. Statistically looks good. So Lucas, I just didn't know if you checked into him, but Lucas Glover is definitely on my list.
Yeah, no, I didn't at all. Surprisingly,
I think most people will do that, like just skip over him.
Yeah, no, he's really intriguing. He actually did the exact same thing last year. Looking at his fall swing, he finished really strong, 7th at the CIMB, 15th at 9 Bridges, and then his first appearance in 2018 at this event, he finished 29th. Now, that might not sound great, but he lost over 4 strokes putting.
Yeah, exactly.
And still finished 29th. Tee to green, he gained over 6. Approach, he gained over 5 strokes. I mean, he knows this course, and then he's coming in with the exact same form that he did last year, but he's putting better.
Yep. He's a ball striker. I mean, he thumps it, so.
Okay, interesting.
So. Yeah, so keep that. Well, maybe we'll touch on that some more on Wednesday night on the live stream. But yeah, I kind of was waiting to see your thoughts on him because it was almost sneaky, but maybe I was missing something. So yeah, to be continued.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's drop down into the 7K, and I'll let you hit on the 7K here. You said you're trying to build off a 10+ K guy. Are you gonna maybe stop in the high 7s or jump down the low 7s?
I've actually got a lot of guys that I like in the 7s all the way through. So that maybe that was why I was leaning towards being more okay with playing a 10K and up guy. But I've just got a lot of interest. I'm going to name off all these guys, and then I'll come back to some guys that I'm higher on. But if I'm rapid fire, just bear with me. Daniel Berger, I have some interest in. The only thing that scares me is that this is his first event back. He was coming off a wrist injury. So Daniel Berger at 7,700, Chesson Hadley at 7,600. I've got some interest in Neiman, the Dream, the Wonder Kid at 7,600. I really, really like, but I'm afraid a lot of people are going to like him at that price also. Richie Wierenski is actually coming in with awesome form through the fall swing, and he performs well at this course in the past. So 7,600, that might be a pivot off of Neiman. I'm not sure. Siwoo Kim came in and had a great result last year. I think he finished tied for 9th in his first attempt. Again, we know if he can get his irons dialed in, he can be dangerous. Some other guys that are popping off for me. Again, Dylan Fratelli, I was on him last week. He made the cut and played pretty well over the weekend. Actually ranks 11th overall in my model, 7,500. Corey Connors, everybody is talking about. I have no idea why he's first overall in my model. So I'm going to need to look into that one a little bit more. But everybody's talking about him that I've seen on Twitter and some preview articles. So just keep that in mind. One guy that I am really interested in is Bud Cauley, 7,400. His past 3 events here, past 3 appearances here, he's gone 14th, 3rd, and 14th. So certainly he knows this course. He performs well at it. Again, question is he's coming off a layoff similar to Berger, an injury. He got in that car accident last year. We're not sure if he's back to his full self.
He started good when he came back, right? He played when was that? The Shriners. He came back at the Safeway, and finished 46th, then 10th at the Shriners the next week, and then played the OHL Mayakoba. So I think he's back to full strength, or at least good enough to play him. So yeah, I'm not totally opposed to that.
And then just a couple more down here. There are a ton in the 7Ks. Harold Varner, I've always got some interest in. Jamie Lovemark has performed well in the past. Russ Henley, he sort of struggled down the stretch last week at the Sony. Obviously,
let's just pump the brakes just a second here. Mr. Harold Varner's got 3 missed cuts in a row. Do you think he is going to change that this year?
That's a great question. I actually forgot that I had his tab up on my screen, and then I looked at his course history and saw 3 missed cuts and closed it out. So
no, I mean, ball striking wise, yeah, it's great. But like I mentioned, kind of when we started the podcast, I'm definitely taking a stronger lean towards course history, and he doesn't have good course history. So
yeah,
I mean, ball striking wise, pretty much all of last year except for the first 3 months of the year. So I guess he would be a pretty strong GPP play. No one will play him, and he looks to be trending up as far as his tee to green game and stuff. So
yeah.
I didn't mean to halt you on that, but yeah, 3 missed cuts.
Oh no, you're fine.
My first red flag when I was looking at him earlier.
Fair enough. Just a couple more down here, and then I'll throw it your way. Landry obviously performed here last year. He was in the playoff with Rom. And then 2 other guys that I'm interested in. These are the last 2 down here. Bronson Burgoon. Statistically, he looks pretty solid. Last appearance here for him, I think, was his first and only one. And he finished, he's had 2 appearances here. He's made the cut both times. 42nd and 34th, though. Not great. And then lastly, Anders Albertson. I've really got some interest in. Statistically, he is checking off a lot of boxes, tee to green, ball striking especially. And he has got some great form coming in. He finished 5th at Sanderson Farms, 28th at the Shriners, made the cut at Mayakoba but sort of struggled, and then 15th at the RSM. Now, as far as his course history, that's the question, right? He has none. He hasn't played here. So I think this is the long-standing debate. We always seem to have it. We've got guys that play well here but have bad form, and then vice versa. We got guys like Anders that have good form coming in but haven't played the course before, where we're weighing course performance. So what do we do there, Drew?
For like Anders, Mr. Anders Albertson, he's someone I'll probably play. It'll be in GPPs. There's a few down here that have no course history, and I mean, you just got to make a judgment call that they're mature enough. They've been on tour. They haven't been on tour that long, but they've been on tour long enough to get their feet wet and feel decent. So he's on my list. The one that I like actually below that should be, I mean, I've been following him, I wouldn't say closely, but let's see, maybe pull up him since the summer last year, and I don't even remember how I even got on him, but it was lucrative. I think that was the start of a good stretch going into the FGWC last summer. But George Cunningham, have you even heard his name?
No, but he's 13th in my model somehow.
Well, let me just throw some numbers at you. So, first off, he finished 29th at the Canadian Open. He gained 5 strokes tee to green, and he gained a little bit around the green, so he missed some greens, but those are a little bit tighter fairways, a little bit tighter, smaller greens. So understandable on the around the green, but still 5 strokes tee to green is pretty solid. Going to the Shriners in November, it was November 3rd. He finished 36th. You may think is decent. He finished so he made the cut, finished 36th. He gained 9 fairways gained on the field, which I love. That's huge. 6 green and regulation gain, love it. And let's see, he had driving distance gain of 5.7 yards on the field. So, like, he's not just hitting fairways, he's still hitting it decently far. So, George Cunningham is one I like a ton. And granted, there's not a ton of data still on him. He came from, I don't know if it was partly web.com or just the Canadian. It might be the Canadian split with the web.com, but I like him quite a bit. I think he might be formally on the betting card, not as an outright, but like a top 5. I think his odds are long enough. But man, George Cunningham, like you were talking about, Anders Albertson doesn't have course history, and I think Anders Albertson's pretty solid and should have some ownership. But man, George Cunningham, I think I'm just gonna jump back on the bandwagon of my own bandwagon and play that into the sunset. Hopefully he continues his good play, because he can strike it. I mean, his ball striking stats are unreal.
Yeah.
So like elsewhere in the 7K range, a guy kind of talking about newbies. Now we're talking about veterans. I think I'm going to play some Jason Duffner this week, man. He
showed some form last week before the wheels fell off.
Yep. He won here 3 years ago in 2016. Last week, he lost a ton of strokes putting, which has kind of been his MO the last year. But, I'm kind of interested in jumping back. Of course, it's GPPs. But, yeah, I think I'm kind of high on Jason Duffner for the year. It kind of falls into one of those, like he had a bad year last year. A lot of rumors came out about his wife and Tiger the year before and all this stuff. But I think Duffner should kind of pick up his play this year. So I'm going to be closely watching Jason Duffner this year, and he's got a good finish, obviously, at this golf course with his win, and then he had a 25th place and a 36th last year, so decent for his price. As far as like strong plays that I do like Joaquin Niemann. He's up there. Richie Werenski is fine, and then probably going down a little bit further is Sam Ryder, 7,100. Kind of touched on him last week, and really spit the bit on Friday. Missed the cut, but he started off strong Thursday. I mean, I was really high on Sam Ryder, and he really started the tournament off great, and I was almost more impressed in how well he started, and then just faded. So I'll definitely jump back on Sam Ryder. This is a great golf course for him. He is top 10 in the field in strokes gained ball striking, and he's 5th in strokes gained approach. So driving, great. Approach, great. And then lastly, in the 7K range that I'll most likely touch on, at least for now, is Rory Sabatini. Played him a little bit last week. He was real cheap. But yeah, he gained over 6.5 strokes tee to green, 5 strokes on strokes gained approach, and then he lost 4 strokes putting. So I'm hoping he kind of continues that good ball striking here this week. And no really high finishes, but again, it's kind of becomes a putting contest. So he's obviously hitting the ball pretty well. So I will continue with Mr. Sabatini this week at 7,000. I think it's decent.
All right. No, I like that one. I always forget about him for some reason.
I mean, he's not flashy. He was good many years ago, and he still shines from time to time. So I think he's one just to watch.
Good call.
All right, you want to drop down into the 6K? I don't have a ton down here, but I'll kind of hit on what I do have.
Yeah, go ahead. I don't have a ton either, so by all means.
All right, one that I'm somewhat nervous about, but I'm going to try to ride it, is Mr. Dominic Bazzelli. Finished 33rd last week with a really poor final round, but his events, there's really no way to dig into it further, but like all of his showings in 2018, he gained strokes putting and lost strokes tee to green and approach. Like, that's not a recipe for success, but like he still pops. Like the RSM, he barely gained strokes off the tee, and then he gained 5.5 strokes putting, and he finished 11th. So if this is going to be a putting contest and ball striking is important to me, but if like driving accuracy, like he can hit in the rough, it's going to be cut down. Dominic Bazzelli should be, at least in play or at least in consideration this week. So don't feel great about it, but he's definitely on the list. Another one down there is let's see, Roger Sloan, and beat him in a head-to-head 3-ball actually. So it wasn't a head-to-head, it was a 3-ball. Doesn't make sense. On Saturday, I think it was, and Pat Mayo might have tweeted out, I'm not sure, but I ended up looking into him a little bit more. And decent. Like, he's not, you're in the 6K range, you're not going to get studs, but I mean, he played last week, so that's a big, a plus for at least recent form, or at least recent playing. So I do like that. Gained 4.5 strokes tee to green, lost strokes putting. So if he can continue that, he should be sneaky, or at least decent enough for a sub 6.5 guy to make the cut.
All right. You got anything else, or are you good?
No, that's pretty much it. Like, there's some that I probably will end up sprinkling in. Like we talked about Max Homa last week, didn't really do much, but like some of these guys I'm interested in going back to. You got, like, just looking through it, you got Trey Mullinax, who's not that bad. So they're definitely sprinkles in GPPs, but nothing that stands out to me as like the nut play.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe DJ Trahan. DJ Trahan looks decent, tee to green, but yeah, again, it's a mix of course history and recent form. So who do you got down here in the 6K, and we'll kind of wrap it up and save whatever new stuff we find for Wednesday.
Okay. So I will note on your Bozelli pick, he missed the cut here last year, but he did finish 5th the year before at this event. Mm-hmm. And he did the exact same thing. He gained 13 strokes total and lost strokes around the green, gained a few strokes approach, and gained almost 5 strokes putting in that event. So maybe that's what he does. Yeah, I mean, who knows?
People have strengths in their games. Like Jason Day, his iron's been bad, and he's scrambling and putting good. That's not the preferred way. I would prefer it to be like a Justin Rose and lose strokes putting, but still win, by 2 shots. But some guys just aren't the best ball strikers, but man, they can putt, and when they get hot, you can't stop them. So, of any of the golf courses that we've seen so far, this would be one of those that kind of, it's not so much bomb and gouge, but I mean, he could spray it a little bit and still have a chance on the greens.
Yeah. So just like you, I don't have a ton in this range. Actually, I'm like looking through it and trying to find guys that I might even consider. Sam Saunders might generate some interest in me. He rates out 19th, birdie or better, 20th off the tee. He's got some decent driving distance. That was one thing I was looking at, might take out, but not terrible overall. Tee to green is not terrible either. I think when we're looking down here, we're mostly looking for cut makers, somebody that might surprise and notch a top 30 or something. Outside of him, David Hearn a little bit further down. Again, off the tee to green and ball striking, or top 20 in the model that I'm looking at. 18th in green and regulations gained as well. Might be an option down here. And then the last name that I will mention is a young guy, the guy that popped first round, or was it first or second round, that nobody could figure out where he came from, was the Adam Svensson.
What? I was on him last year. I just wasn't on him last week.
He's ranked 19th tee to green, 11th ball striking. He certainly faded, and he faded pretty fast after the first day. But obviously the talent's there. I mean, he came out and shot, what was it, a 62 the first round there at the Sony, and it might be worth a flyer. I mean, most of these are flyers that we're talking about. So, but I do think he has the ability to make the cut and might round up a lineup that certainly don't feel great about it. Don't feel great about any really in the 6K range, but might be a name worth considering.
Yeah, there's 2 that I will mention that's kind of like as red flags. And I got one of them pulled up, and I don't have the other one. But Julian Etulain, and I'm probably mispronouncing his last name, but he kind of popped a little bit last week, maybe Friday or Saturday, and then he lost. I mean, he was missing fairways left and right, quite literally, and then lost a ton of strokes tee to green, just did nothing. So he's one that I think people might just see the name and maybe jump onto. The other one is Brian Stewart, who had a decent showing last week, but he did the same thing last year at the Sony, and like he gained like 7 strokes putting last year and did nothing the rest of the year. So he's another one I would probably try to encourage you to avoid, that, you know, people mention it off his recent finish. Brian Stewart's another one that just screams fade to me.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's pretty much it. I mean, there's not a ton down here in the 6K range again, but, you know, if anything does change or something pops up, you know, I'd love to find like a $6,300 guy that's just crushing it and no one finds him. But yeah, for now we'll leave it at that. So any closing remarks from you there, Jacob?
No, nothing really that, you know, jumps to the forefront. Again, excited about really just getting our feet under us. I know last week people might be frustrated with the results, but I think first full field event, you know, just keep with the process of what we're doing, and I think we'll really start to see some results here in the next few tournaments and moving forward.
Yep. No, I'm excited. Last week was fine. I mean, I think if you had a couple missed cuts, it was probably really frustrating for the first event back with a cut. But yeah, I mean, you didn't have a lot of history to go off of, so kind of stay patient, I guess. And this is a pretty good event. I mean, some of these guys don't have the history yet, but they have course history. Majority have stats, so I mean, you have a decent mix. Like, you're starting to come together with good packages for players and making good decisions. So yeah, just stay patient and keep focusing on the process of, you know, formulating your game plan for the golf course and then creating good pools of golfers to kind of create your lineups from. So sounds so simple, but
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, just stick to the process. The results don't always speak. It's still golf, but looking forward to this week, the Desert Classic. So Jacob, thanks so much for joining me, man.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you so much, everyone out there, for tuning into the Fantasy Golf Bag podcast. You can find us at fantasygolfbag.com. You can find me on Twitter at Redkacheek and Jacob at JkrayASU. Tune in Wednesday. Definitely mark your calendars. Wednesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern. We'll kind of briefly go through all of our players. Ownership. We'll look through some fan share projections as far as ownership and some tags. A lot of good stuff, and that's, you know, we'll touch on weather as well. But all that stuff will hit on Wednesday night, 9 p.m. So definitely check us out. And you can find that at twitch.tv/Redkacheek. So again, thank you so much for tuning into the Fantasy Golf Bag podcast. Good luck this week. If we don't hear from you, have a good one.